We've got about 15 minutes. Do we want to talk about dad rap? That's the third one we got. I know
Yeah.
FD, that was
Come
yours. You
on.
wanted to talk about dad rap.
Yo, because I'm told like I'm
Because
working
I
on
think
this Diddy
everybody on
video.
here is a dad except for me and Jeremy.
But it's
So
not about actually
Thankfully.
having kids. It's about
okay.
getting
Jeremy's
older.
hiding a child. Jeremy's Canadian. That means he's hiding a child.
We all have some child out there somewhere.
It's about getting older with hip hop and like being unk, right? And so like I'm doing this Diddy video, and like the Diddy video got me going back to listen to Busta Rhymes. It was like my
Right.
first ever favorite rapper when I was 13. That was the first CD I bought with my own money, was The Coming. And it's so funny because like it came out at the same time as AT Aliens and Fuji's The Score, and I bought The Coming. Now, The Coming is still a classic in my book.
4 years
like,
left.
Right. You know what I'm saying? It was 5 years when The Coming came out. It was 5 years.
Kind of a hot take. The Coming's actually, it's got like 3 good songs. I mean, I
No.
love those 3 songs. I bought the tape.
Well-
I was right there with you, but the album's not that strong all the way through.
I only went back and listened to the ones I loved, like, which is Everything Remains Raw. Like, anyway, so
Best
like,
song on the album.
that's
Go ahead.
best song he maybe ever made. Excuse me. But I'm looking right. Busta Rhymes came out with an album last year. I didn't even know. And it's got nothing but Quavo and Young Thug and Bia and Coi Leray. And I'm Busta, you 50. Like, what's Coi Leray? What you doing songs with Coi Leray for? Because like the album he did before that, and it's so funny, the one he did before that in 2020 was what I would call a dad rap album.
ELE too.
ELE 2. That was
Love
to me, that's
that
dad
album.
rap.
Incredible album.
Jay Electronica's joint is a dad rap album.
Yeah.
444. That's a dad rap album. And so like when I think about dad rap, it's like, okay, one thing I think a lot of old heads need to like internalize is that it's over. It's over for us as the true arbiters of the culture. Our ears, our sensibilities that were birthed in the 90s and the 2000s. I genuinely do not know who Playboi Carti is. Like, I could not pick him out of a lineup, or Ty Dolla $ign, and there's one more. Like, I just don't know. And it's not that I think they're bad. It's just that I went to a soccer game for an 11-year-old today, and so if I have 30 minutes for a commute, to listen to get my hip hop in, I'm not about to try nothing brand new if I don't have the illest cosign ever on it. So I'm about to listen. What you been talking about? I don't even know what that is.
Ransom?
No, not Ransom. You talking about somebody's album you wanted to do a video on?
Oh, Leon Thomas. It's R&B.
All right, so
Leon
I'm
Thomas.
on that tomorrow, right?
He signed to Ty Dolla $ign.
Okay, shit.
I was gonna say, also don't put Ty Dolla $ign in that category.
You got kids. You got kids, right?
Yeah, I'm just speaking to my like how are y'all dealing with how much more work it is to keep up? Are you Busta in 2023 with Bia and Coi Leray on the album, or are you Busta in 2020 with Kendrick and I think Q-Tip was on the track? You know what I'm saying? Are you
Vibes Cartel?
Right. Are you going back and forth, or are you staying in your lane? And which one is appropriate at our age range?
Well, I'll jump in here because part of the reason why I started the channel is because I was obsessed with this idea. So like I'm the same age as Tom Brady, from Boston, and like he was still playing, and Kanye for that matter. And like he kept on talking about flexibility. And then I realized there's like mental flexibility. And so I realized it can't possibly be that everything new sucks. Like Playboi Carti legitimately is amazing. I truly believe he's a top 5 MC, and he's impossible to listen to the first 50 times you listen to him. Because like, what is this guy on? But it's like,
did you mean that MC? Did you?
Yeah, no.
I
have him as a top 5. I mean, he has to release. He has to drop this album. I Am Music. You think we're waiting for the J. Cole thing? We're waiting for Carti, but like, for what Carti does, which is not at all what all of us in this room want, right? Like what we all want is the new LL Cool J album where he's awesome again and Q-Tip is great. But like that balance together, it is really fun because you don't have to like pretend, like I'm a young kid. I like, but there is good stuff to it. And you learn to discern, you know, that like maybe you listen to Destroy Lonely and you're sort of like, it's too far. But you know, but then you like this other stuff. So I say it's really, it feels good to stay in both lanes, to have your feet in both areas.
This just got so much more interesting
because I took my kids last night to Travis Scott. He did MetLife Stadium.
Oh yeah.
So football stadium, and brought out Playboi Carti. The fucking place shook. The
Wow.
ground underneath your feet.
Carti came out for Fiend?
They did Fiend like 15 times. It was crazy. So yeah, I still don't understand the word, but we had fun last night.
I would not have pegged Sky as a Playboi Carti stan. This is an incredible turn of events for this conversation.
No, let me tell you, when Whole Lotta Red came out, I'd never heard Die Lit, and I reviewed it, and I'm like, this is great. And everyone else on the internet, you know, Fantano, everyone's like, this is terrible. And like, I was the only person who called it because I'd never heard Carti before. I'm like, what the hell is going on here? This is some of the weirdest, most far out music I've ever heard. This is not even music. It's like anti-music. It's like all the stuff, and like
he is music.
Yeah, it's successful anti-music, and then, yeah. So
yeah, I want to be clear. Go ahead, Curtis.
Real quick, I'm just a fan of intention, right? And I do still hold a position at Genius, so 9 to 5, and we're programming that channel, putting artists on Verified. So I mean, it's literally part of my job to pay attention to what's new and what the audience is into, and a lot of young artists surprise me. Like, so really having that job and holding that position, if I didn't have it, or if I didn't work in the music industry, maybe I would just sink into my comfort zone of what I like. But I love being challenged and listening to these new kids. Man, if I could find some like intention in your shit, and you just not treating this as just a lick, there's a ton of young artists that I enjoy that I think are incredible. I like Die Lit. I recognize Die Lit was dope. A Whole Lot of Red went over my head. We'll see what this next one does, man. I don't know about Carti. I'm on the fence. I'm sometimey with Playboi Carti.
Look, I'm gonna jump out the window and say, call me over here tonight. Every time I hear Carti, I just want to turn the pitch down. Like, I want to turn the pitch down.
You did this time.
This shit. I just can't. I can't do the tiny voice rap. I can't. Yeah. Like, and this is not me saying this about whether or not that's a skill set that people enjoy. I look at it and I'm tired of feeling guilty for not liking some shit because of my age. And I'm looking at a point and I'm giving you a unique perspective because I'm a rapper myself. I'm still a rapper myself. And I don't look at it as still a rapper. I look at it as I'm forever evolving. Here's the other end of it we don't talk about. As much as I champion Pete Rock and that Common album, I think that's dope. It's not enough of those out here. And I think that the evolution that needs to happen is the same thing I heard with LL Cool J. LL Cool J, one of the greatest of all time, straight up said, I had to teach myself how to rap again in order to understand how to evolve in this time period. I thought it was one of the craziest things I would have ever heard LL say. But I understood that when I worked with a younger producer, my homie Iman Amari, and he challenged me on this. He was like, Curtis King, you sound like Kurt Franklin. And I said, what do you mean? Don't talk to me like this. I'm a lyricist. And he really had me in there doing vocal production and evolving. What happened was probably some of the best music I've done, and it happened in my 39th year of life. So I think what's happening is that in the same way that we're looking at media right now, we are the evolution of media, of hip hop media, right? Having these kind of conversations to this kind of viewership, we're the evolution of that in our respective platforms as well as what we're doing here. I think the same thing has to happen in the art form for rappers, in that your only evolution shouldn't be your ability to sound like the younger rappers. I think there needs to be, okay, continue to evolve, continue to develop that, continue to get to another level. That's the reason why LeBron at his age can compete at the level he does, is because he continues to invest that amount into his body. I think that needs to happen also with lyricists, and that we can't be running the same boom bap plays. You know, I think one of the craziest critiques that I hear, and I don't care if I get canceled for this one, is that older hip hop heads will say all of that little mumble rap sounds the same. But then Shiggy does a meme video where he's rapping, and then he does the same kind of formula that you see a lot of boom bap rappers do. But we don't have a conversation about how there's traditional boom bap hip hop head rappers that do the same exact play in every song. The same criticism you have of the folks on the radio, you're doing that. It's just with an underground audience, so it's righteous. So evolution has to happen on every level.
Hey,
he shouldn't say it, but he's right.
I didn't understand the word Das Effects was saying. Camp Low, Lucchini, those might have been the the original mumble rappers. Camp Low, Saturday Night Live is a classic album. I love that album front to back. I know every single word on that album. I could rap it. I just don't know what all the words mean. So yeah, it's nothing new, man. It ain't just
That's how I am with
we
East
been doing that
99
shit too.
Eternal with Bone Thugs.
Think about back in the days.
See, my
I
thing-
know
exactly how it
I know
sounds.
that one.
Look,
I think we're getting a balance though. I think right now it's funny because like we talk about all these cycles happening in rap, and it's always kind of been like that. If you look at like snap rap, and you know, I'm no historian all the way back to day one, but if you look at like snap rap and then what happened after with the blog era, like I think right now we're about to see a lot of young rappers who are very inspired by a lot of these middle child rappers kind of coming up again. And even this lyricism being at the forefront right now in this battle, I do genuinely think, and I've met a lot of them. I see a lot of people really who care about their bars. I host an open mic in LA every few weeks, and there's hundreds of rappers there. And lyrics are important to these people. There's a lot, like there's this kid, Chris Patrick, who I'm super high on. Like he just toured with Russ. He cares about his bars, but incredible rapper, right? But he's able to still make a melody. So I am excited to see if this reset really kind of comes to the forefront and we're able to have more of that.
Yeah, because I definitely think the silent majority in hip hop is huge.
Yeah.
You know, it's a political term that people will use when they're talking about the electorate. There is a huge underserved audience of people who want to hear lyrics, bars, who want to dissect things, who want to hear perspective on stories that aren't being covered nearly as often. I'm still shocked. One of the biggest stories over the past 3 weeks on my channel is two stories. One, Willow Smith talking about musicianship, which was a story I just wanted to do because I was like, oh, this is cool. And then David Banner talking about defend hip hop. like to me, it was like, you know, and TMZ Hip Hop ran that story as part of a junket. He's in I can't think of the name of the show, but he's in a show on Netflix right now. And that was the nugget to me that was like really dope. I think there's a lot of different markets, different corners and segments of each of our audience where we're seeing that kind of thing. Because like what Curtis was saying earlier, those stories performed. like I look at what the low end story is doing on my channel more than I look at what the top end story is doing. And if the low end average is going up, it tends to be stories like that. You know, I feel like that silent majority is very loud and very hungry right now.
So on a slightly different note, one thing I'm a big proponent of, I'm a former, like my first thing is actually I was a teacher. I was a high school teacher. And I would get at the way people that were supposed to be here for the youth would talk about them on the low. I'm like, y'all really don't like these motherfuckers. Like I get they're annoying, but you can't have this job and not love the babies. And so I think about that a lot in our roles now, especially as elders, in that how are we pouring into them directly? Because I think one thing, especially of the hip hop generation, you talking about how many of our elders would even be here if not for the crack epidemic, you know what I mean? Let alone everything up until that point. So I think we kind of have a, not toxic, but like a disordered connection with what it means to be an elder, because we looked at 50% of our elders side-eye. And so we don't necessarily know what an OG actually ideally should be. An OG is really just a survivor, you know what I mean? And like that may not necessarily be good for like producing good future generations. So I'll say all that to say, how are and can we pour into these young folks, especially as the distance between our music taste grows, to show them like, look, I don't know the difference between Playboi Carti and Gunna. I'm sorry, Professor Scott. They both sound the same to me. But I respect that y'all do, and I love that for y'all. You know what I mean? And like I want to continue. Like people were yelling at me when I first came on the scene about Billy Woods. I wasn't up on Billy Woods. And I may have threw a little shade early on before I really gave it a listen. And I was like, you know what? This is a lesson learned for me to not throw shade. And Billy Woods is the OG. I didn't even know he was old like that.
Oh, yeah.
And so like, how are we doing that? Are there young new rappers? They don't have to be triplet. What did you say? High pitched voice. Curtis.
I can't.
They don't have to be them, but like this, like for me, it's Kenny Mason. Like Kenny Mason hits Kenny Mason. I love Kenny Mason. I was like, oh, I wish I had this when I was younger. Because this is right in between a couple of different genres and sounds. Like I can get Project Pat and Nirvana on the same album. What? Like, so that's me. Does anybody have a new young artist that they're really like vibing on?
Before I answer that, can I ask you one thing? Because you're gonna bring up a point I'm gonna forget about, and I don't want to hijack it. But isn't it crazy how rappers come up, and I've seen this in my own peers as a rapper myself. You come up and your whole spiel is being kind of like anti-establishment, anti-caring about what people have to say about you. And then the moment you get to your 40s, you become so self-conscious about being a 40-year-old rapper. You become so self-conscious about what it looks like to do certain things and be a certain type of way. And I think what's going to happen and what needs to happen beyond reaching out to the younger artists and collaborating where it makes sense, I think we also have to be audacious enough to tell our truths, even if they don't do the same numbers, which is kind of some of our responsibility here on YouTube sometimes, right? We'll do a certain piece knowing that it's not feeding the machine at that time, but we understand the purpose of and the impact and the legacy and all these things that matter to us. I think as artists, my OGs got to stop being scared as shit. You're scared as dog shit. And I talk to them, and they won't say things in public what they say to me, but I listen to them, and I'm like, dog, but you were so fearless in your 20s and 30s. But then I realized this, and Justin helped me realize this because I was so mad at 3 Stacks for not wanting to rap no more, but I'll leave it alone. so mad. But then I came to the conclusion that it's not up to 3 Stacks to come down that hallway and give you some new raps. Bro, you're 39 getting ready to be 40. It's on you to do them raps that you want him to do.
Right.
Do that for yourself. Whatever impact that had on your life by listening to a certain type of lyricism, that's on you, big dog. If you don't want to do it, then you're just repeating the same cycle. So I'm looking at a lot of my peers and I'm like, yeah, it's dope that we can get on this YouTube and do the things, but nah, we still need some of them raps, OG. Like, if anything, you should be showing like, yo, I'm going to help extend the career of some of these young rappers so they stop crashing out and being crash dummies, thinking there's no long legacy in this, thinking that there's no opportunity to live in this career choice beyond 30 and stop making, short-term decisions. I think if we live in our truth and we extend it, we're going to have to take a lot of L's in the process and sacrifices. I think that they'll see like, chill out. I got time. To do this.
We need them colonoscopy bars.
We need them colonoscopy
I didn't
bars.
think that. I was like, yo, I would love
them.
to hear about an aging black man's health journey as a man that got a colonoscopy last year.
Yo, I mean,
because all of us
got a referral today.
Right, like we need to be doing that. Niggas is dying of colon cancer for no reason. Because Andre 3000 ain't hit us with that 16 about getting his colon.
Because he with that flu. That's why we didn't get. That's why you didn't get colonoscopy because
that's dad rap. That's rapping about aging.
I'll tell you this. Doechie's my favorite artist this year of anybody.
She has one of the best albums this year.
Yes, one of the best albums I've heard in a very long time.
Yeah.
I mean, she's rapping in tongues, and it is hitting on like that boom bap. She's literally rapping in tongues.
Right. She's making fun of the fact that she's doing it, and it works.
And still works. You still bob your head like she's saying the realest shit on the album.
It is adventurous. It's a ride going through that album.
Yeah,
I feel like she is loudly represented for all kinds of different communities, all kinds of point of views and perspectives. And she's a hell of a songwriter, whether it's melodic or whether it's just straight bars. Yeah. So anybody who ain't listened to Doechii yet, punch yourself in the face.
Yes.
Alligator Bites Never Heal. Amazing. It's one of the top. That's one of my 5 favorite albums this year so far.
Yeah,
but also there's sort of like a mid ground, like the sort of like Denzel Curry and Vince Staples, who are like so hot, or whatever, 10 years ago, and like they've never been better than they are right now. And I sort of wonder what the energy is for them when they're not the new hotness like Doechii. And I agree, Doechii is an amazing album, but what do we do with people who aren't even old? I mean, because they're not middle aged, right? They're still in their 20s, but they're not yet old rappers, and they don't have that. Like there's so many people in that. I almost wonder if that's not the place where we need to support them the most, because it's easy to support. Same thing happens with like new rock bands too. Like the new band shows up and everyone loves them, and then they release a second album, and everyone's like, yeah, it sucks. First album's better. And
the thing I'm looking forward to, and my prediction, I think it's primed. I think it's being set up. I think whatever Jid is about to do next, is about to like take his shit to another level. I think it's prime. I think it's been building. So that's Professor Sky, to your point. That's one artist that, I mean, one, he got to deliver.
Yeah.
and once he does, I hope it's something that's powerful, and I look forward to supporting that because I think it's an important time in his career right now. It's that turning point.
Yeah.
The Eminem feature was crazy.
Yeah.
Yule?
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, I said the same thing. I said Jid is basically building to be rap's next superstar, but we haven't seen the effects yet. He had the M feature, he had the Imagine Dragons feature, he had the TikTok song, but this is really gonna either take him to the next level and explode, or we're gonna see what happens. But I truly believe in him, and I hope that we support him and that he comes through with a classic.
And that's kind of I think when we talk about hip hop mid tiers and even the superstars, I think it allowed us and even the other part of the equilibrium in that we have to invest in creating stars because, again, I'll probably drop in next week. I talk about Busta Rhymes and Ludacris and how, remember when they was doing verses, I remember getting into a argument because I was like, we need a Busta Rhymes Ludacris verses. And this motherfucker was like, why? And I'm like, why? Do you not remember how many hits? Like, yeah. So Busta Rhymes was never, he was in Jay-Z's era, in Nas's era. He was never considered above them, right? That's clear. But there was a Busta Rhymes banger every 6 to 18 months. A top 10 radio hit. Same thing for Ludacris. But because, he was goofy, so people didn't give him the same energy. But at the time, the way the media apparatus was set up, there was more room for the mid card of hip hop. Mm-hmm. And like now, because everything is driven by the algorithm and these machines, if I talk about Busta Rhymes, I can get more clicks talking about, even a Jid in the future or Doechii, as opposed to how I feel about the new Vince Staples or how I feel about another mid-tier guy. And so like, I think it's incumbent upon us to kind of drive, create a better machine, with the machine to say, no, we do want to show love to these mid-tier folks. I talk about Kenny Mason every third video, because I love his stuff so much. And I want that name to be circulating so that it means something. So yeah.
Yeah, but I think that goes back to kind of what we were saying earlier, and with a lot of the creators and street, like it's a lot of people in this who like hip hop. You know what I'm saying? Like it's easy to be a Drake fan. Like you can't tell me you love hip hop and oh man, I'm a Drake fan. Like everybody's a Drake fan. Drake is the biggest in the world. Tell me what I don't know.
Right.
And I think we lose a lot of that, and a lot of that has to do with the technology as well, because we become validated by numbers. We jump on YouTube and we can see how many views something has before we even press play. And subconsciously what that does is, oh, this ain't worth my time. He ain't even got 1,000 plays. Or you go on Spotify, it's the same thing. So it's a combination of the how much the hip hop audience has exploded, how much of us are really still niche who loves it, and how much hip hop is really still niche, and then the technology which dictates how we feel about something before we even press play, because it's a numbers game and it's a popularity game.
Wouldn't it be a wild turn of events? Wouldn't it be a wild turn of events if this era of rappers refusing to do the responsible media because they feel like they don't have to? Wouldn't it be a wild turn of events that as things evolve, this next class of artists now come to these developed platforms that we're building out right now, because they recognize it's not just about coming and doing an interview with a Rob. What if I get an opportunity to do a lyric breakdown with Rob? What if I get to talk hip hop with Professor Sky on the what is that? What is that? The
Inside the Actors Guild.
You know what I'm saying? Like or FD, like for the rappers who are, this is something that always used to bother me. I'm not gonna say no names, but there's so many rappers that are the best lyricists in the world to give the shittiest interviews you've ever heard in your life. Okay, I'm just gonna go out and just say that. They give you yes and no answers, and it's like, are you the same genius that made these lyrics? Because it don't feel like it. With that said, though, maybe perhaps it's because we're putting them in places where they're out of their element, and it's not necessarily showing off their biggest features and their benefits. I get into a place where I'm like, should I do this interview with an artist that I know is not necessarily going to get the clicks, or should we react to content together so that the audience still gets the same benefit of seeing you in a different light, still gets the benefit of having to have some context about your story, what you're working on, and now they're even more in tune to it because now they've shared 2 hours with you doing reaction content. So now I'm looking at this from a different angle where I'm like, as we develop our platforms, because we're responsible with them, because we love this culture, we're the ones that can change that. We don't have to answer to anybody that's like, nah, you can't bring him in here. We need to talk about this and do. No.
Right.
We're that now. So I'm
real quick. I want to give a big shout out to Lils and Javen. They're moderating this conversation for us, by the way. So let's give a quick round of applause for Javen and Lils for moderators.
The chat was going crazy too. Shout out to the chat.
I haven't looked at all, man. I've been locked in on all this perspective spilling.
Hey, in the future, could we like do a compilation of our favorite bad rap interviews? Because I remember reading The Source, Ghostface Killer, one of my absolute heroes. He was interviewed, and he's like, "What are you reading?" And I'll paraphrase. This is The Art of War by Sun Tzu. I never read that shit. I just picked that shit up and read it. I never read it. I read that shit. And that was printed in The Source, just like that. And I'm like, this is maybe my favorite MC of all time. Just an absolute genius. And he said he read and did not read the book 3 times in the same sentence.
He did come out and say he was paranoid schizophrenic when he was starting out recently, which makes some sense, considering the unique flow and the illest debut ever. Like, to be a top tier rapper in the hottest group ever and wear a mask for your first like whole album run.
Like,
that was the illest shit ever. I wish I could. I wish it. Shit is dope.
I'll tell you, Professor Scott, the worst interview I ever done.
Okay.
Was at Genius with Rich the Kid.
Okay.
And his team. They asked me to do it. I had this series called IRL. It was expensive to produce, where we would take an artist and I would do something with them in real life. Like I did one with 21 Savage. It was amazing. I took him to a blacksmith and we made a knife out of raw steel, the same knife that he has tattooed on his head.
Wow.
And we did that as an activity and we had a talk and it was amazing. And I went with Yachty to a pizzeria. We made pizza together because Yachty loves pizza. And so it was shit like that. But Rich the Kid is a skater. Rich the Kid loves to skate. I said, man, let's go to the skate park. I don't know how to skateboard. Teach me how to skateboard. We'll get somebody and then we'll sit down and talk. His team came to me for the interview. So I agreed to do it. And I said, yo, there's a Rich the Kid story here, man, because I do think I'm not the biggest fan of the music, but I'm like, man, dude has a talent. I mean, he got an album with Wayne. He was down with the Migos. He was with QC. Then he got the song with Kendrick. Like, he just know how to make shit happen.
Mm-hmm.
Man, I did all this research, found out all this stuff about him. I built a wonderful conversation. He was 3 hours late. And then every time I asked him a question, he didn't want to skate because he didn't want to mess up whatever designer sneakers he had on. I was like, well, didn't your team tell you he was coming to skate? Your team asked me to do this with y'all. We paid for this production. And I said, all right, let's sit down and talk. I know I got a good interview. He answered every question in ad-libs. Would not answer a question. Would not. Bro, it fucking infuriated me. It's, I never again. I would never and whatever. Pete, I got no problem with Rich. I just won't ever do it again. Ever. If it's the last interview on earth, if he runs for president and win, like I won't. You know what I'm saying? And
Rich
it's
the
still
president.
And it still got 1 million clicks. I can't
It's still
watch
got
the
a million
video.
views.
Wow.
It's still got a million
Still
views.
got 1 million views. I can't. Yeah, man, I done bust my ass because I couldn't skateboard. I was going down the ramp. I fucking fell. I bust my ass. I told them.
I'm literally searching for this right now.
Oh, it's
Right.
fucking terrible.
It's about to have 1,000,001.
It's terrible. and so that's the worst interview. So, but to Curtis's point, I don't like putting artists in situations that they're not ready for. Like
Right.
again, to his credit, I don't think Rich asked for this per se. His team asked me several times to do it, and I did it. But I always go back to publicists, managers, labels, whoever. Yo, if your artist is not an interview artist, don't send them to do an interview. You know what I'm saying? Like rest in peace, Young Dolph. I love Young Dolph, man. We've had so many great conversations and dope times off camera. Dolph was a tough interview. I just think when that camera and them lights came on, something about him like clammed up, and it was hard to get a conversation. But off camera, we were dope. So and I love Dolph, and I cherish my time with him. But I would tell his people all the time, like, man, maybe he's just not comfortable doing an interview. Let's not do this. Let's figure out something else. So yeah, some artists just aren't they're fucking brilliant in the booth, but then can't articulate it in an interview, and that's fine, man. I don't force nobody to be, something that they not.
Doug once fell asleep on me mid-interview.
Oh man,
it was.
I feel like
what?
I feel like he fell asleep on us too for Genius for one of them Zoom interviews, or he had just woken up.
This was in person. I was talking to him.
He
I've
drool on
actually
you?
I never put the interview out. I've never even said it. I told him when I saw him again, but at that point he was going through. I think he was super leaned out, and I didn't realize it. And me being naive, I was like, he was like really like just sleepy, and I was like, oh, late night in the studio. And he's like, yeah. Me being naive, I didn't see his double cup underneath the chair. And so I'm talking to him about Tyler, the creator. Like I did all this research. So I'm like, I'm really like excited to get his perspective. And that's it. I'm like, how do I wake someone up? And so I was like, yeah, yo. He's like, I'm sorry, what'd you say? He couldn't even get the drop. I literally couldn't even release the interview. I'm like, this is great. But that to your point, it's on the teams. Like, how are you letting this guy come to an interview in this state?
Yeah, it's terrible, man. And then you'll be wrong if you wrote up the interview the other way. Like, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like then everybody will be mad at you. But it's like, just don't put them in a position. One, you got to kind of be artists got to be professional too. But as they team, if you know your artist, just don't put them in that position, man.
Right.
There's other ways to promote. Start a beef. Go poke at J. Cole and see if he'll answer you back.
Full circle.